Nilavjang stood on the rooftop, with his hands clasped behind his back. The night wind whipped at the hem of his robes, and the shadow in his eyes was deeper than the darkness. How could Sovereign High Marshal Valerius possibly fault Grandmother? The demon hunters operate outside the Demon Suppression Division's control, mere pretext. His knuckles whitened, just like that old relic, the Sovereign. Verdant City needs the sharpest blade, fresh blood, someone to sweep every last one of these hesitant old bones out of sight. The image of that cold, aloof face seared through his mind, and a feverish fervor rose in Nilavjian's gaze. Pingkang Mountain, 120 demon steeds shrieked in unison, iron hooves hammering sparks from the stone. The black-robed captains reined in together, dismounting with blade-sharp precision. Ferris landed and strode briskly to Soren's side. 2 inner camp lieutenants followed tight behind, both peak jade liquid realm, their seniority deeper than Ferris's 120 captains, every 1-3 stripe. A force like this couldn't be gathered by the Sovereign's prestige alone. These people came for Soren.
Seal the mountain.
The lieutenant's voice cut like winter.
No one leaves.
Before the words faded, the captains fanned out silent as an ink-black tide, spreading their dragnet along the mountain path. Soren lifted his eyes. White clouds pressed low, ancient pines hard as iron. He activated the chi, gazing art. A pulse of warm, true chi surged from his dantian, flooding his eye sockets. His eyeballs steeped in that gentle heat, faintly swollen. The world bled of color. Verdant peaks dissolved into murk. White chi swirled in clumps, cottoning the ridgeline. Scattered golden rays stabbed through the haze, needle sharp. No trace of demonic corruption. Not a single filament. Soren released the technique, his expression still. If evil spirits announced themselves so easily, the adamantine sect would never have hidden this long. The summit, a plain grand hall pushed through the pines and cypresses. Before they drew near, the low chanting of sutras oozed out, thick and viscous as mud. Extinguish my kalpa, spanning inverted thoughts, attain the dharma, body without traversing asampya eons. 2 novice monks at the door rolled their prayer beads. The moment their peripheral vision caught the wave of black surging up the mountain, their thumbs froze. They spun, they took a step. Whistling chains cracked the air, lashing around their necks, yanking them backward. The novices crashed down, the lieutenant's knee already grinding into their spines. Ferris's boot blasted the hall doors off their hinges. Wood splintered. Inside the dim chamber, smoke roiled like a living thing, heavy with a cloying, sweet perfume, no ambush, no guards. A clay Buddha gazed down in still, eyed compassion. On the prayer mats, aging believers pressed shoulder to shoulder. Gaunt faces shone with eerie serenity, nostrils twitched, and their murky eyes flickered with ecstasy. Compassion, compassion, the chant hummed steady and low. Ferris swept his gaze over those numb faces. Cold crawled up his spine. He retreated, Adam's apple bobbing.
Sir, what now?
Soren walked to the pinned novice, crouched, lifted the monk's robe, his long fingers pressed against skin, tracing the bone beneath. Rough texture, joints gritty like sandpaper over raw iron, barely started training. Soren withdrew his hand and straightened. Before the novice could finish his question, a boot stamped down on his elbow. The snap of bone cut the air, shrieking tore through the hall. Soren went to the entrance. His jade liquid realm aura erupted outward. Air convulsed as if slammed by an invisible giant hand. The smoke churned, unraveled, vanished. The believers on the mats raised their heads in a single motion. The joy in their eyes receded like a draining tide, replaced by a gouging, hollow ache. They clawed at their robes, veins straining at their necks. The chanting shattered. A low, rasping wail poured out.
Master, all right. I'll send word for my grandson to come at once. A little more compassion. Just a little.
Some staggered upright, shambling like hungry ghosts. Withered claws clutched at Soren's sleeve.
Paper and brush. Give me paper and brush.
Soren brushed the hand away. Golden light rekindled in his eyes. Warm true chi seeped back into his vision. In the gray, washed world, white chi billowed, gold needles threading through. Soren held still, waited, his divine sense probed downward like a strand of hair, a tremor nearly imperceptible. Then a tendril of crimson wriggled from the depths, thin as a hair, appallingly red. A viper flicking its tongue through cracks in the bedrock. Soren withdrew his gaze technique. He strode up to the Buddha statue, 5 fingers clenched. His knuckles cracked, a burst of sharp pops like exploding bamboo. Fist force tore the air before the blow landed. The clay head exploded. Stale incense, ash, and dust erupted outward in a dry, brittle roar. Then damp, cold carrion, stench vomited from the statue's pedestal, rot, rust, excrement, all mingled like yawning, open a dungeon sealed for decades. A secret passage, a black mouth gaping wide.
Secure the surface.
Soren stepped into the dark. The two lieutenants cupped their fists. Ferris sucked a deep breath and followed. The stone steps underfoot grew slick and sticky. The reek swelled feces, blood, rust. Ferris clamped his mouth and nose, his throat convulsing as he forced down the bile. They descended until the steps gave way to sodden earth. Black iron bars lined both sides. Beyond the bars, bare stone cells. A filthy trough ran through each one, caked with excrement and pasty gruel, the edges dusted with medicinal powder. Bodies soaked within, half submerged. Cheeks smeared with filth, eyes dim, swallowing mindlessly. Filthy as pigs bred only to eat and drool, they swallowed a few mouthfuls, then slumped sideways to lick the powder, eyes bulged. Bodies convulsed until limp, then squirmed vacantly on the wet ground. Some crawled to the bars, pressing their skulls between the iron rods, shoving with mindless, rhythmic thuds. Ferris scanned the endless rows of stone cells disappearing into shadow. Throat tight, he stopped counting. He no longer bothered to curse the so-called holy men. Soren never paused.
Perhaps they've grown accustomed to it.
Ahead, two elders tipped wooden buckets, pouring scarlet liquid into a vast pit. The blood pool churned, thick waves streaked with threads of milky white, clotted chunks swirling within. They set the buckets aside and turned, their gazes ice-cold, voices flat as dead water.
You two arrived too late. You'll die here.
Ferris recognized those faces, old guard elites of the adamantine sect, no weaker than Monk Benchin. He exhaled, hand settling on his saber's scabbard.
No matter what today brings,
They're both yours.
Soren's eyes were already fixed on the blood pool. The surface seethed. The liquid level collapsed at a speed the naked eye could track. A shaven head rose from the gore. Viscous blood slithered down cheeks, stretching into fine threads that dripped back with soft, wet taps. Beneath the skin, two currents of chi, one deep as night, the other pale as bone, darted like living fish, alternating with every breath. The dregs of the pool quaked violently. The face was beardless, the eyes threaded with crimson, blank and imbecilic. The entirety of the blood pool funneled into that body, yin and yang harmonizing across the dermis, an aura dense and seamless. The cross-legged figure sat motionless, like a subdued Arhat demon.
Without passing through countless kalpas, the Dharma body is attained.
The Vajra Abbot rose, movements wooden, mumbling as if in a trance. His body convulsed. He pressed his palms together toward the cells, then pulled the two adamantine sect elders into a fervent, grateful embrace. As his arms closed, the fibers of their robes burst strand by strand, emitting faint, crackling pops. Bones compressed with the wet snap of breaking timber. Their eyes bulged, instantly netted with blood. They never made a sound before their breath stopped. The abbot released his grip. Both corpses slumped to the ground, spread like collapsed sacks of meat. He glanced down, puzzled. Then his mouth split into a shrieking grin.
May this fruit now achieved become a sovereign jewel, ferrying countless beings like Ganges sand. I have reached perfection. I was ready to deliver you. It is you who lacked the fortune to receive it.
Before the words faded, his form shot upward. The thick stone wall shattered before him like rotten tofu. In a heartbeat, he tore out of the dungeon. Ferris stared at the bodies on the floor. His heart plunged into an abyss. Soren tapped his shoulder lightly. Ferris flinched and wrapped his arms around himself, looking up in time to see Soren pinching a wisp of that black end, white chi between his fingertips. He sealed it into the silver bell token at his waist.
Thanks.
Soren turned and strode toward the exit. Atop Pingkang Mountain, the rock trembled. A gaunt figure burst from the earth and shot into the air. Over 30 soldiers under Captain Jin had been lying in wait. Though the two deputy commanders were startled, their hands moved without hesitation.
bind him.
The chain snapped taut, cold, slick, slithering like a brood of spirit serpents coiling in the dark. Dozens of demons suppressing restraints wrenched tight around the hovering figure. The deputy commanders planted their boots into the formation nodes, breath locked in their throats, channeling the squad's gathered chi through the links. Silver hooks meant for piercing pipa bones gleamed in their grips, ready to fly. And then every face twisted wrong. The chains pulled harder. Below, the junior officers' features crumpled. Veins forked across their foreheads. Boots bit into the earth so deep the soil groaned, and something inside their knees gave with a dry, brittle crack. The hovering figure barely swayed. From the crown of a distant, ancient cypress, Nalaf Jiangse watched, hands clasped behind his back. Mild surprise flickered across his expression, overbearing body tempering technique. The Vajra abbot swept his dull, dazed gaze downward, then backhanded the chains. A sliver of awareness crept back into his face. The eerie grin melted away, replaced by something deeper, fathomless apathy.
Below core formation, I am invincible.
A single casual tug yanked dozens of soldiers clean off their feet.
Above core formation,
The abbot unhurriedly peeled the chains from his body, his composure absolute.
I might still be able to fight.
Nalavjeng shook his head and reached out, collecting a strand of that black and white chi. Only those in core formation truly understood the monstrous chasm between core formation and jade liquid, and this abbot had nearly bridged half of it. With prowess like that, even he could not afford a lapse. He tensed to leap from the bow and stopped cold. The main hall's entrance. A figure in ink-dark robes stepped through. Soren did not hesitate. He vaulted skyward, the grim wolf mantle snapping rigid behind him like a war banner. A whip kick lanced down, all clean brutality. Muscle bulged beneath his sleeve, the shadow of his leg arriving before the strike itself, and his instep slammed the abbot's shoulder with a deep, muffled roar. Bang! The abbot's body punched straight into the ground. Cracks webbed outward from the crater, stone shards screaming through the air. Soren shed the mantle with a flick of his wrist and kept falling, pounced again, Meridian seizing Dragon Capture's opening form. Twin fists hammered in a relentless, visceral storm. The abbot flipped and met him, fists against palms, raw and feral. Neither dodged. Their movements held not a single flourish. Trees toppled at a graze. Boulders burst on contact. Every onlooker's heart lurched into their throat. Nelav Jiangxi watched in silence, in close quarters body, tempering carnage of this level. Even he could not track the victor with certainty. He mentally recomposed his assessment of Soren. Jade liquid perfected cultivation, a physique honed past any reasonable threshold. Even if he himself had not come today, this man could hold his own. Arrogance without the teeth to back it was conceit, but when strength matched that arrogance, it became something else entirely. Soren threw a jab, knuckles cracked. He sealed the abbot's right arm dead. Drake demon power howled through his meridians. The 100 chain, Tuolong physique, swelled his sleeves, but that black and white glow clung like a parasitic curse. The hidden force of Meridian, seizing Dragon Capture, only bought half a hitch in the abbot's movements. Barely enough. Soren did not retreat. Amid the maelstrom of bone, grinding flesh and joints, shrieking, his head tilted. His gaze slipped past the abbot's shoulder through the sparse trees and lanced straight toward that distant treetop. Nelav Jiangxi had just taken a step. One step. A mere half-wisp of his aura leaked, yet Soren's stare was already fixed on him. Calm cold, like an unsheathed blade. Zero hesitation, only a clean warning, don't move. Nalavjang's foot froze, his brows furrowed sharply. He understood. In the boiling heart of a death duel, Soren had still split a sliver of awareness to sweep the perimeter. Not audacity, composure. Nalavjangsi quietly withdrew his step. His estimation of Soren turned a quiet page.
You Dharma plundering rat!
The Vajra abbot's roar split the air. His eyes flooded crimson, the black and white light on his arms erupting. His strength swelled another threefold. He saw it now. The tempered body his opponent wore came from the same lineage as the adamantine sect's legacy. The Bodhi sacred tree had long withered to death, yet this thief had somehow seeded a spirit plant to temper his flesh, pushing it beyond even the Bodhi Vajra physique. Jealousy flooded his heart like venom. Killing intent blazed. Soren did not retreat. He adjusted his breath. His body sank. His right fist struck with explosive inch force, precisely sealing the gap in the abbot's right arm joint. The wet, muffled impact of meat against bone like a war drum, severely constrained. The black and white radiance had swathed that arm into a bronze pillar, force bleeding away layer by layer. But it held. It pinned the abbot. The Yi-saber left its sheath. The straight blade cleaved the air without a whisper. Greedwolf fiend, slaying art pushed to its zenith. The edge sank into dead, lightless black, the air around it chilling sharp. It plunged straight into the abbot's chest, sank 1 inch into flesh. The abbot clapped his palms together. Bare hands clamped the blade. Black and white light flickered like a living thing, the pierced muscle writhing mad, forcing that black steel out by hair, thin degrees, skin and flesh ground against the edge with a shriek that set teeth on edge.
I told you.
The abbot's face twisted, his smile frozen like lake ice.
Below core formation, I am invincible.
His palms burst with force, intent on snapping the straight blade in two. In that instant, deep within Soren's eyes, a speck of crimson bloomed soundless. Inside his body, the sun-forged treasure furnace, woven from tens of thousands of dark, red meridians, rumbled open. One heartbeat. The external pill suspended in his chi-si jolted awake. Demonic, baleful aura slithered free, like a nest of serpents, threading through him in sinuous streams. No longer a rampaging force beyond control, but seized in the iron grip of Soren's will. He drove it down his meridians, into his palm, into the hilt. The Yi saber transformed. Across the lacquered black blade, a dense net of scarlet veins bloomed, pulsing and twitching like living blood vessels. The air around the edge warped violently. A faint shimmering ripple spread outward from the blade's axis, the aftermath of baleful chi scorching reality itself. A bewitching miasma swallowed the weapon whole. Schluck. The abbot's smile froze into a death mask. He looked down in a daze. The long blade had run him clean through. Vitality chi flooded against the steel, like a breached dam, surging backward into the blade. He could hear his own blood hissing as it was devoured. His powerful frame withered at a speed the eye could follow, smooth skin desiccated and shriveled, crumpling like ancient bark stretched over bone. Eye sockets sank into hollow pits. Black-white radiance flickered wildly across his body, fireflies in their death throes. Then was crushed to nothing by the baleful chi. His reaction was swift. He tried to shove Soren away, but just as his hands rose, the crimson glow along the blade had already rampaged through his innards. In a single pulse, the 5 viscera pulped blood vessels burst, muscle dissolved, all life devoured. Soren pulled the blade free. The Yi saber grated against desiccated flesh with a dry sand scrape sound. A wisp of lingering black-white aura seeped from the wound, twisted into a thread of smoke in the air, and scattered to nothing. The abbot was a husk. He crumpled with a paper, light rustle. Soren slid the Yi saber back into its scabbard with an offhand motion. He adjusted his collar, glanced down at the withered shell on the floor, and arched an eyebrow.
Invincible beneath the core formation realm.
He murmured, his tone as indifferent as remarking on the weather.
Then, what does that make me?
The Zhao clan's enshrined elder reached out, bony fingers snapping shut around Varric Zhao's wrist, like a steel trap.
Young master, time to go home.
The words came out quiet. Varric's head whipped around, fury clotting thick in his throat. Before he could explode, the elder's eyes flicked toward the end of the street. Ferris walked out of the dusk, leading the demon steed. A leather sack was tied across the horse's back, swaying in the breeze. Flattened as it was, the shape of limbs still showed through. A bare, smooth skull lolled from the sack's mouth, bobbing with every stride. Thump, thump. Asterisk it knocked against the saddle each time, a hollow, rhythmic beat. The withered limbs scraped the leather with a dry, papery rustle. The setting sun dragged the shadows of horse and rider across the bluestone slabs, stretching them into something monstrous. The Vajra Abbot. Varric looked like lightning had struck him, his hand gripping the wooden bench mid. Air froze solid. The bench legs hung inches above the floor, motionless. The second floor dropped into dead silence. The scion's breathing turned ragged. Shock flooded their eyes. A warrior who had nearly stepped into the second rate, a body cultivator whose flesh matched the core condensation realm, dead in 2 days, tied to a horse-like cargo. Going to Pinkang Mountain to butcher. A chicken wouldn't have been this easy. Varric slammed the bench down with a flat thud.
What? Can't a man change benches? My ass went numb sitting still.
He dragged in ragged breaths, chest heaving hard, veins snorted.
Last time Lord Nychest Roshent came back on horseback, the target was from Verdant Peak. But adamantine sect. What are they worth? A demonic sect you crush on the way past. You think it deserves him showing up himself.
He raked a scornful look over the crowd, mockery dripping rehearsed from his voice.
No idea what swill you, pig-brained fools, are chewing on.
Ilara threw him a wordless, sidelong glance. Down below, Ferris lifted his head, then pulled his gaze back, dazed. He looked at his colleagues. Not a single face looked steadier than his own. When the Sovereign General had moved on Verdant Peak, it took over a month. But Soren had led the lieutenants against the demon sect himself. Up the mountain, beheaded the old monk down again. Start to finish, less than an hour, more casual than going out for a meal. The dishes hadn't even all arrived, and the matter here was already settled. Ferris rubbed the back of his stiff neck. This merit they'd collected, it burned in the hand. On the roof of Dashun Tavern, Lian sat cross-legged, her pale shins crossed at the ankle.
So tell me, how'd you get back so fast? What exactly did you do?
Nilav Jiangxi's expression stayed blank.
Stood in a tree, kept watch.
Lian glanced back, curious.
And then?
Then, I came back.
Nilavjiang Si let his lip curl, barely. He didn't even get what he'd been sent out there to do. Lian laughed despite herself.
He has got that much ability. My grandson here looked down on Soren just a moment ago. One trip outside, and his attitude flips this hard.
More than you imagine.
Nilavjiang Si exhaled, his face unreadable.
More than I had at his age. That includes you and General Yu in your youth. His methods are more decisive, more ruthless. Given time, he won't be my inferior.
And so you plan to take him with you, replace us old fossils.
Lian stretched out, completely at ease.
I don't have the ability to lead anyone, and I won't shelter or guide him.
Nilavjiang clenched his fist slowly. At those words, Lian's face finally flickered with surprise. Her grandson already saw that youth as a rival. A core condensation martial artist feeling pressure from a young man at the pinnacle of Jade Liquid stage. Lian chuckled softly.
Record this merit under his Silver Bell Token Demon Hunter's identity. Keep the Demon Suppression Division out of it. Once he has piled up enough achievements, arrange for a core condensation method and cleansing at the martial temple as fast as possible.
She paused.
Oh, where is he right now?
Came back early. Went to oversee the lieutenants seizing adamantine sex assets.
Nilavjiang frowned, looking down at the great family scions below. Everything suffered in comparison. What a useless pack.
Since you are idle, before you leave, drag those fake bald donkeys out and behead them. The sight annoys me.
With one sentence, Lian passed the death sentence on adamantine sect. She rose.
Originally, I planned to have anyone at all walk the kid through standard procedures. But since you hold him in such regard, you'll be the one to take him to Yong'an City, broaden his horizons.
Fine.
Nilavjiang nodded. In the west of the city, adamantine sect. Across the shattered stone steps, lieutenants hurried back and forth. Buddha statues toppled under clubs, smashed open to check for hidden treasures. Then the soldiers moved to search the next. Seizing property, exterminating households. This work they did with practiced skill. Not even things wedged under the seams of bed frames escaped being scoured clean. Soren leaned against a carriage, flipping idly through a martial manual. Two lieutenants stood at his side, speaking carefully.
Lord Ni He's Droshend. Should we copy it to examine back at headquarters?
Soren closed the book a moment later and tossed it back.
No need. Log it directly.
Adamantine sect was once a famous, mighty sect. How did they fall this low in just a few hundred years?
The lieutenant took the book, his expression a bit embarrassed. Another one started to speak, then shut his mouth halfway. If Lord Nies Drolshend had ordered the seizure to begin, the abbot was already dead.
Get to work.
Soren dipped his chin. Once the two had left, he leaned back against the carriage again. His fingertips brushed the martial manual they'd managed to dig out. The rough paper grain came through to his touch. Core Condensation, Samsara Zen Body Upper Volume. Asterisk. His true chi began circulating on its own, following the illustrated pathways. Beneath his skin, a faint dual shimmer of black and white glowed. One death, one life. The former for slaughter, the latter for restoration. Faint ripples of life and death spread silently outward from him. A nearby Lieutenant hauling crates stepped back without thinking, eyes wary and confused, unable to place what felt wrong. Soren called up his panel. A flicker of quiet satisfaction crossed his clear eyes.
For core condensation, Samsara Zen Body, upper volume, uninitiated, asterisk.
As expected, the first time he'd faced the Vajra Abbot, he'd felt it the man's aura didn't match typical demonic arts. This embodied demanded sedentary cultivation, drawing the essence of birth and death from the fabric of heaven and earth to temper the self. The abbot's comprehension of Buddhist Dharma was likely on par with Soren's own, making breakthroughs through seated meditation almost impossible. So he'd resorted to seizing the most accessible vessels of life and death to aid his cultivation, and against all odds, it had actually borne results. But this martial art existed only in the upper half. Soren had encountered many incomplete texts like it. The closest comparison was the Golden Sun they ate. Treasure mystic body at mastery. He could barely step into Jade Liquid, and against true Jade Liquid fiends, he was near useless. This half of the Samsara Zen body, however, touched realms beyond Jade Liquid. Fully cultivated, it would certainly amplify his strength, and not by a small margin, though not enough for a qualitative leap. What genuinely seized Soren's attention was the fact that it was a core condensation tier body refining art, and he could refine demon beast, crystallite, so long as his lifespan held. He could attempt to evolve it into a complete fiend martial art.
Soren checked his remaining lifespan. A little over 400 years. He let out a quiet breath.
How long had it been since Verdant Peak? How had he burned through this much again already?
Night clamped down over the city. On the wooden table in the courtyard, warm food steamed, and a cup of wine sat 7/10 full, untouched. Jang the butcher cradled the boy, a rough palm patting the child's back in a slow, gentle rhythm. Theron leaned against a pillar, stare drifting miles away. Footsteps clicked outside the courtyard. Both men snapped their heads around, hid the worry scraping at their eyes in forced grins.
You are back.
Soren paused in the doorway. Steam curled from the table, heavy with rice and braised meat, mixing into the candlelight's soft flicker. A taste spread across his throat. Strange and familiar, he tossed the Grimwolf mantle onto a chair. The dark fur landed with a dead weight. He was already seated, taking a shallow sip from that wine cup.
What is going on?
Theron let out a breath.
We were afraid something was going on with you, Lord H. Droshend.
Jong the butcher didn't speak. He raised his cup and emptied it in one hard tilt. The harsh liquor scorched a path down. He swiped the dregs from his stubbled chin and ground out.
From now on, you need a butcher. Just say the word.
He didn't keep going.
Preparing a coffin and fighting to the death churned in his chest, but he swallowed them.
This rough man knew the person across from him had no use for pointless noise. Soren set his chopsticks down, raised his cup with an offhand motion, and clinked it against theirs. Porcelain sang. Jong the butcher bared his teeth.
I am planning to take the kid away from Verdant City, first lie low in some small county town for a while. Once we're settled, I'll have someone pass word.
He said it flat out.
Some folks want to lick your boots. Others want to slit your throat. Skill level, I am at. Staying here just makes me your weak spot.
Watch yourself.
Soren turned his head toward Theron.
A bit ago, the way you looked at him, like he was your own son.
Theron rolled his eyes and dropped onto a seat, his tone thinning out.
I was just thinking about the two of them walking out of that wrecked temple alive. Got a little emotional. Grandmother says, I've changed a lot lately. She wants to thank you face to face.
Tomorrow, then.
An abrupt certainty settled in Soren's chest. There were people in this world who cared about him after all. The three of them nursed only a few more mouthfuls before retreating to their rooms. In an age ripped apart by fiends, getting drunk was a luxury far too foolish. Before the sky had lightened the next day, Jang the butcher pushed open the door without a whisper. He stood before Soren's door, the boy in tow, bent his body low and bowed deep. He straightened and never glanced back. The two of them slipped silent into the alley's morning fog. The sun climbed. Theron came back to the courtyard, carrying 2 bags of oranges. Soren had already changed into the old ink-black shirt he'd brought from Cypress Cloud County, the formal uniform of the personal retinue vice. General was stored back inside his silver bell token. He stepped through the door.
Leaving again?
Theron stared.
I can't just huddle inside the city forever. I'll go scout around.
They walked together to the commander's manor. Second time Soren had stepped inside, and his stride stayed steady. Anyone who saw him would have chalked it up to routine official business. Chatter drifted from the courtyard, persistent.
Little young, just wait a moment. I'll introduce you to a young man.
Oh, Nessa, I am only delivering Lord Fang's salary. Really, I've got no intentions.
Just meet him first.
I still have matters to tend to.
Soren strode in. The young woman turned, her gaze slipping past Theron and catching on the tall, lean figure in black. Her body went limp, and she plopped back onto the stone stool.
Suddenly I am not busy anymore.
Theron shot her a side eye.
Go tend to your matters.
Actually, they're not pressing. Hey, don't drag me, Lord Neas Droshend. It is me, the one who helped you pick a cultivation art last time.
Theron hauled the girl out, but she kept craning her neck, eyes stuck to Soren's face. Nessa swatted her.
You little rascal! Got no manners at all!
She beamed at Soren.
Ah, you came! Sit, I'll cook!
The old woman chattered, piling on questions about every small, ordinary thing. Sitting in the courtyard, Soren answered each one, a sudden duty jovu washing over him, like a lazy afternoon spent listening to a neighbor's elder gossip in some life before this one. By noon, Plain congee and light dishes were on the table, with an extra bowl of red braised pork.
Eat up. That boy's been much more decent since you gave him a lesson. Next time, be tougher on him.
Soren picked up his chopsticks and took a piece of the half-fat pork. The fat dissolved on his tongue, the savory sauce soaked deep, and a mouthful of smooth congee chased it down. A warmth radiated through his limbs. His movements paused, barely a hitch. The silver bell token at his waist quivered. Subtle vibrations hummed through the cloth, soft as a mosquito's flutter, too faint for anyone else to catch. His face gave nothing away. He savored the meat slowly, and a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth.
Your cooking is truly excellent.
Is it? Then eat more.
Nessa's face lit with delight.
When there is a chance.
He finished the congee fast, rose with an apologetic tilt of his head, and cupped his hands in farewell. As he stood, the ink-black sleeve rustled soft against the air. Tharan sensed the shift and lifted his head.
Lord Neas Droshend, take extra care.
Soren had already turned. With that first step, every trace of leisure bled away. His gait shifted to the soundless, rapid stride of a hunter. Watching the black figure vanish through the courtyard gate, Nessa dropped her smile and delivered another slap to Theron.
I don't know what mischief you are stirring. A fine young man like that. If he had a wife waiting at home, would he have to gamble his life like this?
You can't just grab any random person.
That is true enough.
Nessa thought for a moment, then laughed.
That senior apprentice sister of yours, she is a lot like him.
Theron paused, then felt there might be something to that. He glanced around, voice dropping to a near whisper.
Senior sister Jiang suffered a demon calamity when she was little. She crawled out of a mountain of corpses all alone. Only thing with her was a golden-furred macaque that had fled the same nightmare. They shared grain cakes on the road, kept watch through the nights. Back then, there was still light in her eyes. Later, Master taught them both martial arts at the same time. The macaque took to the saber, senior sister to the sword. Months in, the macaque had the basics down, and Master gave it a blade, ordering it down the mountain for experiential training. Not many days later, Master called her over and said the monkey had fury coiled in its heart first thing. It'd do was seek revenge. If she could break through the initial realm within a month, he'd take her to save it. Senior sister slept maybe 2 hours a day, but still fell one step short.
Theron set down his chopsticks and sighed.
From then on, she never asked one word about that macaque. Never even went near that place. People say she is cold outside, warm inside wrong. She truly doesn't care about anything anymore.
A wholly unremarkable carriage rolled out of Verdant City. Inside, the two sat face to face. Nelav Jiangxi's fingers dipped into the silver bell token, pulling free a tangled knot of auras.
Take these. Store them well.
Soren held them up to the light.
What are they?
123 auras. Demon lords at Core Condensation. 17 from Core Formation.
Nelav Jiangxi exhaled a turbid breath.
Every harvest the demon hunters have reaped since arriving in Azure Province. 1 copy for each of us. The greater half of Azure Province's fiends is locked in here.
Soren flipped his wrist and sealed them all within his own silver bell token. Then Nelav Jiang's hand came up again, palm flat. A strand of purple chi, so faint it barely existed, floated there. The carriage curtains shuddered without wind, as if the heat had been sucked straight from the air. The violet light coiled like a sleeping snake, eating the light, dimming everything around it. Soren brushed it with his divine sense. A low drone rose in his skull, a distant roar crawling up his bones, a chill driving into his forehead. Nalav Jiang's voice sank to a murmur.
Howling Moon Fiend King. The instant you feel something wrong, run. Survive or not, that is all luck.
Soren's eyes lifted.
A fiend king.
The fourth realm of martial artists, primordial chaos, also called martial immortal. Fiends of that realm are kings. At the word, Nelav Jiangxi's pupils contracted. The temperature dropped another 3 degrees.
If that thing gets within 3 feet of High Marshal Valerius, there is no possibility, or Grand Commander will die on the spot. Only a martial immortal inside Verdant City could even contest it.
Soren held his breath and sealed the purple wisp away, tucking it with the other auras. He sealed it, then asked,
So many fiends where? Are the experts of Azure Province?
Nelav Jiangxi's tone went flat.
12 great generals, 3 gold belt demon hunters, all at core formation. The 4 great clans and 6 major sects might have 2 or 3 more hidden. Total core condensation experts, maybe 40 or 50. Azure Province has tens of millions of souls. Spread that out. You don't even get 5 per commandery. Fiends have their own races, not exactly friendly with each other. Sowing discord among them is one of the demon hunter's few pleasures. Throw in the noble houses, and it is a rough balance. Except everyone schemes, and the demon suppression division has to spare men just to keep them in line.
Nelav Jiangxi fixed his eyes on Soren, that honest face abruptly dead serious.
I hold you in high esteem. High Marshal Valerius will return soon. Whether as his personal vice-general or as a silver bell token holder, he'll think highly of you. But those are things bestowed. How the Flood Dragon died, how your token came to be. You know the truth. Gifts get diluted.
He straightened up.
Make him believe you are worthy of these identities. Earn back what belongs to you with your own skill. My portion's no different.
He extended his hand and gave it a slight shake.
Taking you to Yongan City this time is just to familiarize you with the procedure. Any thought that I'll split my own merits with you, don't entertain even a shred of it. But if you dare to accomplish something on your own, as long as you are not afraid of dying, I won't hold you back.
Soren closed his eyes, feigning rest, his face blank.
No objections. Let's get to business.
Nelav Jiangxi looked amused, impressed. Then his face hardened. The demon hunters got word. That mountain lord's trial for its cubs has begun again. A tiger bears 3 cubs. One must become the Biao. These beasts demarcate their hunt across the great cities precisely to select that Biao king. Last time, they caught us off guard, feasted to their fill, and walked away unscathed. This time, murder flared in his eyes. Their gaze has fixed on Yongan City, and Yongan City has a core condensation expert to hold the line. The cubs had gorged on human-shaped precious medicine for years, sharpening their fangs. Their appetites and prowess swelled until they dared to target core formation martial artists. The carriage jolted. Soren felt the sway and spoke softly.
If this is the Mountain Lord's trial for its juniors, how'd you get wind of it?
Nelav Jiangxi's eyes stayed shut, but his voice sparked hot.
That I don't know. Even if the intel's false, it's worth the trip. You've just become a demon hunter. You don't realize how rare it is for a fiend like this to dare barge into the cities of the Qingzhou 12 counties. Most fiend sovereigns of Azure Province have shocking aura-concealing arts, or unmatched escape methods, or natural barriers like the Sunspring River. For one to charge in so blindly, and for us to intercept the news in advance, this cannot be ignored.
Soren pressed his lips shut. The man had misunderstood. He wasn't questioning the report, only its source. Qingyang Commandery, Yong'an City. The carriage wheels clunked over wet flagstones. The city wall stood mottled, stained with ink green moss. The damp, fishy scent after rain mixed with the crowd's din, washing over them. No solemn grandeur, like verdant city here, just bustling life. One carriage blended into the flow, crept through the gates, and stopped before the richest compound in town. The Deng clan had presided over Yong'an City for centuries. No one ever dared to stroke the tiger's whiskers. Inside their compound lived the city's sole core formation expert. He shielded everyone from fiends. Their status was worshipped without peer. Dune waited by the gate, an uncommon sight, his face betraying not a trace of impatience. The reason was plain. The young woman beside him stood slender as a lotus.
Lady Ru, I have prepared a south-facing courtyard for your uncle, and the welcoming banquet is ready. Is there anything else you require in advance?
Dune wore a refined smile, every inch a gentleman. Liana's voice held a note of shyness.
Young Master Deng, no need for such trouble. Uncle and I can share a courtyard.
The faint blush on her cheek made Dune's heart itch. He grew even more certain she was a refined lady from a great house of Jade Mountain Commandery. That so-called uncle was likely just a family martial escort. The carriage steadied. A broad-shouldered figure stepped down first. Nelav Jiangxi in coarse cotton, his face honest and plain. Dune's guest solidified. He greeted warmly, stepping forward.
This junior is called Dune. Greetings, uncle.
Nalavjang cupped his fists with casual swagger.
Don't recall ever meeting ya.
Dune's smile stiffened. Hearing movement inside the carriage, he hastily turned his head.
Ah, there's another uncle.
Before the word settled, a young man in ink-black robes descended, bearing himself with striking poise, and nodded politely at him.
He's an uncle too.
Dune's mouth fell open. His gaze paused on the stranger's handsome features, then flew back to Liana in bewilderment.
He'll also be staying in the same courtyard.
Liana was clearly caught off guard as well.
He's our younger junior of mine. Quick, get some hot water ready. This road's about to jolt me to death.
The half-swallowed word burrowed into Dune's ears, and sudden understanding hit him. With flawless courtesy, he ushered them into the Deng residence, personally escorted them to their quarters, and ordered 2 servants to heat water. Only then did he smile.
This evening, I've prepared a modest dinner. I hope Uncle will grace us with his presence.
At Nilavyangsi's nod, Dune felt a surge of wild joy. The Deng clan's influence rested on the ancestor's stroke of destiny years ago, which had luckily thrust him into core formation. Now he was advanced in years, decline etched in stone. Their transcendent, untouchable status teetered. To think he would encounter a lady from a major clan of Jade Mountain Commandery. No matter how well Lady Liana camouflaged it, the nobility in her bones could not fool his eyes. He had gone to great length just to exchange a few words with her, and now she had actually brought her future elder brother-in-law along. Clearly, this was a shy probe, a test of his worth. Staring at the ink-robed youth's heroic bearing, Dune instantly felt himself shrink into inadequacy. His earlier lapse of composure made him want to slap his own face.
Please, take some time to catch up. This junior takes his leave.
He cupped his fists, determined to go back and change his attire. He could not afford to lose too badly to the elder brother-in-law. The moment Dune cleared the courtyard, Liana's eyes gave a quick, private roll. She sauntered in, dropped into a chair, and kicked her legs up, crossing them with a lazy confidence. Nilav Jiangxi and Soren followed. The door pulled shut behind them. Liana leaned back.
Chief Jiang, you owe me one. Don't forget to square it next time.
Nilav Jiangxi didn't miss a beat.
Better to clear it now.
From his palm, a strand of aura, ripped from a mid-jade liquid fiend, flicked through the air. With a grin, Liana snatched it and flipped it into her bronze chime with a casual motion. He glanced at Soren.
Next time you ask for a favor and don't want the debt hanging over your head, trade something like this to even things up.
Liana's gaze flicked to Soren, curious.
A newcomer. Teaching him the basics. What business did someone this green have in Yong'an City?
Soren's nod was slight, but his focus was sharp, every lesson absorbed.
So what comes next?
Liana stretched, lazy and satisfied.
What do you think? We hooked that Deng family idiot. Now his old man's the bait to reel in the fiends.
Nalavjunk cracked his wrists, eased into a chair.
I had her come ahead, set the stage. Last time's hunt, we couldn't let the only core formation one slip away. That's why we're in Yong'an, so the news spreads far and wide. The bait's got to stick around so the beast doesn't bolt early.
His eyes slitted, a dart of cold light streaking through.
The fiend's targeting him. To save his own skin, he'll fall in line and ally with us.
The air lowered, killing intent coiling without release. Candle flames shivered in the stifling room. Soren absorbed it all, silent, marking each word. When the Imperial Court turned its gaze outward, the methods cut quick and deep.
How many demon hunters in town?
Nalavjang's glance shifted. Liana propped her chin on one hand, fingers counting with the other.
Around 30. Most are just picking at scraps. One's planning a dramatic rescue of the wastrel, hoping to call him brother. Another's delivering veggies to the noble kitchen. Oh, and a peacock had his eye on Dune. I snatched him first.
A soft chuckle.
Hee hee.
She glanced down, a demure tilt to her head.
Before a young master like him, a pure, sheltered noble miss holds more charm than any strutting peacock.
In a breath, every notable faction in Yong'an City was hooked on the demon hunter's line, and the fattest prize, the Deng clan, was bait. But anyone bold enough to eye it would need at least core formation cultivation.
Rosaline?
Nilav Jiangxi's voice cut in. Liana's eyes widened, pleading.
She went back to Verdant City. If she stirs up trouble for me, Chief Jiang, you'll back me up, right?
She brushed it off and turned to Soren, twirling the auric strand around her finger.
Little brother, once this wraps, Want to come with your big sister and kill a Yao Guai?
Soren's inner chi settled.
We'll see.
His gaze pulled back, no promise given.
That mid-jade liquid fiend. It held nothing to the tiger Yao nearing Yong'an City.
Liana's eyebrows arched.
Oh, the aloof type.
Nalav Jiangxi's eyes shut. A quiet warning.
I wouldn't push him.
The fiend he hunted, Soren couldn't touch. But if she dragged him into her fight, she might not keep her prize. Twilight deepened. Across the Deng estate, lanterns sputtered on, red light bleeding into the damp air. The eaves dragged shadows long and deep. On the horizon, leaden clouds pressed down above the city. Into the great hall, jars of fine wine were carried, tables heavy with rich dishes. Dune escorted Liana to her seat. Nalav Jiang swaggered in at her side. Their glances crossed, soft in the candle shadows. Soren pleaded illness, stayed from the feast. The small courtyard held him alone. In the blazing hall, Dune in azure robes felt short, dwarfed before the forest air. A quiet exhale of relief. Then his father entered, a woman in crimson at his side. Rosalind, her gaze silk and fire, skimmed past him and fastened hot onto Liana.
Fetch the sable cloak. The fox fur stinks.
Liana's head dipped. Nalaba Jiangxi's eyes narrowed. A glint of cold flared and died. The patriarch's chair stood empty. When the old man had slipped away, no one noticed. Nalab Jiangxi and Rosalind both lifted their gazes, stares colliding for an instant, then cutting apart. The courtyard held a dead stillness. Pre-rain wind pressed down, thick as held breath. Not a leaf stirred. Soren sat alone at the stone table, a cup of plain water and a dish of soy, braised pork before him. His mind sank into the interface panel. Martial disciplines flashing like a revolving lantern. He calculated his combat strength in silence, the techniques from High Marshal Valerius, even against a half-step core condensation expert like Vajra Abbot, could still prove effective. The Bodhi Vajra physique was enough to guard his body. The crux rested on that single sky fiend, Yama, outer core. If he counted the outer core into his cultivation, he likely stood at the same core condensation level as Nalav Jiangxi and Zhao Lord. But the gulf in martial arts and innate talent meant in a real fight, he'd be crushed. Against opponents a tier weaker, he should hold his own. A pity-idle speculation meant nothing without a true benchmark. He picked up a slice of pork, brought it slowly toward his mouth, then tilted his head. At the courtyard gate, an old man swayed in, loose robes hanging, a wine jar clutched to his chest. The reek of alcohol hit first.
Meat without wine. Wine without meat. Let's pair up.
And you are?
Soren's voice was flat. Alden's chuckle scraped out. Hoarse, his gaunt face was flushed crimson.
Just an idle old man. Circling the drain in this courtyard. Too old. The heavens are calling the dead.
Soren shifted, making room on the stone bench. His divine sense scraped over the old man from head to toe. True chi sludging like mud through meridians. Vital energy thin as the last dead leaf of autumn, trembling at the edge of a breeze. This man clung to life by a thread, his bones braced like a crumbling tower, threatening to collapse at any moment. Yet this was Yong'an City's foremost expert. Soren's heart gave a slight stir, but his voice stayed level.
Please.
Alden didn't press for company. He poured and drank alone. His face reddened, his eyes sharpened.
Never made it to Jade Mountain Commandery. No chance when young. Too afraid to travel. When old, too many eyes watching. Folks panic the moment I stir.
He hugged the jar, stared hard at Soren.
Tell me, is there any chance left to go?
But he waved it off before an answer.
Forget it. Yong'an's fine. If it could stay this way, that'd be enough.
He seemed to loosen then, voice lazy. In youth, he'd never trained hard. Great mastery was too deep, minor mastery enough. Luck had been good, the tone flattened, like a stranger's story. At some unnoticed point, the wind picked up. The old locust tree rustled, shedding a few specks of dust. Alden shook the half-empty jar, let out a wine-scented belch, rose with a smile, and casually pinched the last slice of pork.
Off I go.
His back was hunched, steps unsteady, and in a breath, he vanished into the shadows beyond the gate. The empty dish on the stone table spun gently in the stifling wind, a faint scraping sound, then silence. Soren's gaze held the empty dish. The dust in his heart settled. This old man's sense of danger, maybe 40 to 50% sharper than Vajra Abbot's. Calling that initial pseudo-core was a stretch. No killing moves, no hidden cards. That was the reality of the martial world, the systematic core condensation path of the Demon Suppression Division. An unaffiliated wanderer couldn't dream of it. Not long after, Nella Jiang strode back, face dark. Liana followed, her voice soft.
Chief Jiang, why so edgy? If you're worried about being found out, just rough them up.
Nella Jiangxi's reply, cut cold.
Rosalind's what worries me.
No more words, each wrapped in their own thoughts. They retreated to their rooms. At dawn, the cocks crow. The Dang clan flocked around their patriarch, escorting him to the courtyard entrance. Alden stood immaculate, each white hair distinct. Sunlight cut across his lean face, a gaze sharp as paired blades. Hands clasped behind his back, he wasn't the half-dead drunk from the night before. This was Yong'an City's true master, authority coiled in every line. His voice, even, gaze sweeping slow over the three.
Honored guests from Jade Mountain Commandery, are your lodgings comfortable? If not, join me at my place. Let me do the duties of a proper host.
Dune lit up, elation bursting. Nalav Jiang's eyebrows twitched in surprise. Then he nodded.
We'll take your hospitality.
Alden's smile was a ghost of a thing, his gaze slipping past everyone without stopping, like he'd never laid eyes on Soren in his life. He shooed his family back and turned, heading deeper into the main compound. The bad feeling in Nalav Jiangxi's gut hit solid ground the moment they arrived. In the courtyard stood a figure, robes red as fresh blood. Rosalind fiddled with a string of jade beads, then, with a bored flick, tossed it onto the stone table. The clatter was crisp and cold.
Do as you like.
The voice was flat. Alden pushed his door open without another word, slipped inside, and let the wooden door swing slowly shut. The four in the courtyard traded glances. Soren made straight for the raised platform's edge, sat and pulled out his black blade, laying it across his knees. His fingertips traced the golden patterns, light and slow. Rosalind leaned against a pillar under the eaves, the travel dust already scrubbed from her face. The corner of her mouth curled into a sardonic smirk.
On a mission and you drag a pack of juniors along. You planning on babysitting them or what?
Liana raised a hand, sheepish.
Sister Xiao, I'm just passing through.
2 silver bell token, demon hunters, in this cramped little courtyard. She snuck a glance at Soren. His face was a mask, even less seasoned than she was, and 10 times harder to read. Nelabei Jiang couldn't be bothered to snipe back. He shoved open the side chamber door, then slammed it with a bang that cracked through the air. Rosalind gave a cold chuckle, turned on her heel, and disappeared into her own room. The thud of her door shook dust loose from the eaves. It drifted down in lazy spirals.
Soren's gaze lifted to Alden's door. That nagging thought from the road crept back. Where had the tip come from? If an elder were testing a junior, they'd toss a few orders and be done. Nobody blabs it to the world. Pity he was too new here. His words wouldn't even land with Liana, like he'd said on the way. Even if the intel was a lie, those two wouldn't let the chance slip. Alden, the old local hand in Yong'an City Code. He know things the demon hunters couldn't sniff out. The deathbed confession yesterday. So sudden it wasn't for his sake. No. Nalafa Jiangxi and Rosalind just loomed too large. The old man couldn't get near them. Didn't want to spook his family. Then Soren happened to be there. So Alden plunked down with a plain wine jar, if that was the truth. Knowing 2 powerhouses were in reach. Why did the old man wear that defeated look before the fight even began? Why carry a resolve you'd only see on a man about to die? Soren's fingers closed silent. Around his saber's hilt, he'd planned to just watch and learn if nothing popped up. Ready to walk his own road later. But now, things looked different.
3 days vanished in a blink, night swallowing the world again. Alden never stepped out of his room. Nalav Jiangxi and Rosalind kept watch like dogs on a fence line, eyeing a thief. The Imperial Court's gut level, distrust of martial artists, bred from the chaotic martial world, was a lesson paid in Mountains of the Dead. Liana, bored to tears, kept trying to chat up Soren, but she felt the gap. He wasn't like her, just a spectator. She threw out,
Hey, how about we ditch first? The credit won't land on us any.
The silver bell token at Soren's hip gave a violent shudder. A surge of energy flooded his ear, but it was hollow empty. At the exact same beat, Nalaviangxi and Rosalind burst from their door, excitement glinting in their eyes. 3 breaths later, a second transmission tore through. This time, a voice came, thick and garbled, like the speaker's mouth was stuffed with phlegm, hoarse and thin.
Mountain, Lord.
The words snapped off. The wooden door that had stayed shut for 3 days groaned open. Alden walked out at an unhurried pace, face calm. He looked at Nalav Jiangxi, clicked his tongue, shook his head. Then he launched. body cutting like a swallow, aura bared to the world. He shot straight for the grand hall. 2 other figures followed without a whisper of sound. The old Deng residence plunged into chaos in a heartbeat. Bodies boiled out from every courtyard, all surging toward the great hall. Liana stared at the tiny bell in her palm, her face darkening. Not that she mourned a fallen colleague. Death was too damn common. But this great fiend, already at the peak of condensed pill, actually dared to slip past Tingyang Commandery General, use pursuit and risk his neck to enter Yong'an City. Her head snapped up.
Damn it! He's after a grand elixir trying to break through and become a core formation fiend lord.
This so-called Mountain Lord's trial was just a bloody banquet. She patted her chest.
That was close. Thank the heavens, it's Sister Xiao and Chief Zhang. Any 2 run-of-the-mill condensed pill cultivators, and he'd have pulled it off today.
She glanced to the side on instinct. The area by the altar stood empty. Inside the Deng Grand Hall, kinfolk and martial artists huddled together, all eyes locked on the old ancestor who hadn't moved a muscle in years. Nalaf Jiangxi and Rosalind flanked him left and right, cutting off his path. Nalaf Jiangxi's brow furrowed.
You're coming with us.
Against the Mountain Lord, every scrap of help counted, no waste allowed. The old man might not have the full picture, but being a local snake, he'd pieced some things together. The demon hunters feared he'd run, and he feared they'd spook. Alden let out a gleeful cackle, like a kid up to mischief.
No. I've got to see to my family first. Even the imperial court can't fault a man for that.
Their faces shifted, but before they could snap back, he changed his tune. He stretched out a hand, pointing into the crowd.
Unless you watch over them for me. Fine. Pick him.
Soren stood motionless in the hall, sheathed blade in his grip. Rosalind's silver bell token buzzed a message right into his ear.
Ignore the old man. Once we're gone, if danger hits, do what you have to.
Demon hunters weren't the demon suppression division. They didn't have to obey. Nalav Jiangxi didn't waste a second more. He grabbed Alden and burst from the compound. A peak condensed pill fiend, way more tempting than a litter of cubs. Only after the 3 figures vanished did the Deng clan snap out of their stupor. Dune rushed at the approaching Liana, frantic.
Miss Ru, what in the...
Liana shook his hand off.
The fiends are coming to eat you.
Both silver bell tokens had gone after the Mountain Lord. If any one of those 3 tiger cubs hit a condensed pill monster, the demon hunters and martial artists left in the city were sheep lined up for slaughter. She yelled at Soren.
We fall back now.
The Deng clan ancestor gone, these dozen jade liquid martial artists would be prime targets. Soren acted deaf. He strode to the head seat, swept his robe aside, and sat. His pitch black blade clunked onto the table, his palm settled on it, light and steady. Rosalind's warning was pointless. Alden knew damn well that once he left, no one could make Soren stay. The old man didn't want to drag him into the fire, but it also planted a favor, a chance to take a few family members under wing.
None of these people speak a single straight word. Asterisk.
The Mountain Lord leaked the news to use human elixirs. The demon hunters used the noble clan as bait, hungry for merit. Alden had steeled himself for death, twisting their scheme to leave a guard for the city. And here Soren was, too damn simple enough to just want to kill fiends. The sky obliged. Black and heavy a moment ago, it suddenly started to drizzle. Dune's breath caught as he stared at the young man in the seat of honor. He managed in a shaky voice.
Miss Ro, your brother, what realm is he at?
Liana stomped her foot.
How should I know?
Her teammate wouldn't budge. If she cut and ran for real, she'd never look herself in the eye again. Demon hunters had no iron laws, but those who walked the martial world still clung to that grimy thing called righteousness.
Perfected jade liquid.
Soren's voice was flat, looking right at them. Over 10 jade liquid cultivators in the Deng clan. If a fight broke, they'd be useful. Better to flash the cards now, so he could point them. Dune's eyes bulged, his breath jammed in his throat. A kid this young at jade liquid perfection, and they spun some tale about coming from a third-rate clan. Even if you raked through every great house's secret corners, you'd never find one. He ducked his head, shame-faced.
I'm at the peak of the initial stage. That's all.
Crack! A thunderbolt ripped open the night, and the white flash lit up the courtyard. Faces twisted in terror pressed together. Women and children shrank further into the gloom. The Deng clan martial artists clenched their weapons until knuckles went bone. That's when the young man at the head of the hall stood up. The Yi-saber slid free without a sound, but the faint hiss of steel on scabbard sent every hair stiff on every neck. Outside, under the eaves, a massive tiger's head lowered into view. slow and deliberate, golden fur plastered into wet, matted clumps by the downpour. Pale yellow vertical pupils rolled with the sadistic patience of a cat teasing a mouse. A barbed crimson tongue rasped over its forepaw. Blood-threaded drool splattered onto the stone steps with a wet, sick slap. The stench hit the grand hall like a wall of meat. The tiger's roar ripped through the air. A weapon clattered to the stone floor, its noise dying into a wet whimper. The tiger demon dropped from the roof and shouldered through the entrance. Mountain, heavy, muscle shifting like grinding boulders. The growl hadn't even died in its throat before the figure at the head seat moved. Long robes snapped. Rain parted in a furious vacuum. Soren's fingers clamped the tiger's skull and wrenched backward, spine arching. The beast's full weight wrenched off balance. The sun-forged treasure furnace roared open. Shackled demonic power flooded the hall. His right hand snatched the Yi saber in a reverse grip. The blade aura bled crimson, saturated with the killing hunger of the greedwolf fiend, slaying art. A red line split the golden fur. Then blood gazered. The massive tiger head swung high. The headless carcass reeled, crashed into a waterlogged puddle, and filthy water exploded outward.
Killed a Jade Liquid stage perfected tiger demon. Total lifespan absorbed 792 years. Remaining, fiend's lifespan 1,266 years.
Soren tossed the head aside. The saber's tip laid open chest and gut. The beast core dropped into his palm. He dug deeper into the heart cavity and pulled free a single thread of scarlet blood essence. Back inside the hall, he laid the Yi saber on the table, closed his eyes, and settled into the head seat. Two streams of light, black and white, slithered under his skin like paired serpents, writhing in locked rhythm. Rainwater dripped from the eaves. The moment it fell within 3 feet of him, it evaporated into white steam without a sound. Nobody noticed. The grand hall had gone several degrees drier. Liana went rigid. The demonic chi she'd gathered at her fingertips fizzled into the rain, her silent curses strangling in her throat. Every stratagem, every careful move, that single arc of saber light had cut them clean in half.
Year 1 poring over Buddhist body tempering methods, chasing the intent of life and death. Year 5, dancing the threshold between mortality and form, rebuilding shape from sheer familiarity with the edge. Year 12, black and white emerging at the fingertips. The body's tempering truly begun. Year 623, Samsara Zen body perfected. The threshold crossed.
The panel faded. Soren opened his eyes. The black and white flicker died in his palm. He clenched his fist, knuckles popped, muffled and tight. Only one thing left to deduce the complete art. A demon beast, crystallite. He rose. Blade in hand, walked toward the exit. Every muscle in the hall pulled taut. The Dang clan martial artists bellowed toward the door.
Fiends, get out here!
Liana pushed her chi observation art to its screaming limit. Her arm coiled with explosive power even though she registered absolutely zero demonic chi. Soren stepped into the rain, bent down, hauled the tiger demon up by the scruff of its neck. Her voice came out strangled.
You, what exactly are you doing?
Going out for a stroll.
The young man in ink-black robes took a casual step forward and simply launched into the air, dissolving into the pitch black curtain of night. The dead tiger's tail dragged a long water trail through the standing puddles. The rustling sound pulled farther and farther away. The grand hall sank into a deadening shade. Dune's lips shook.
Brother Lin, he's ditching us?
Liana let out a sharp breath. Her hand opened. A bronze chime sat in her palm. The faint glow spilled across Dune's face. The color dropped out of it, leaving her features paper, white and bloodless. The cluster of old martial artists stared at the bronze chime. The last flicker of hope in their eyes guttered and died.
Demon hunters.